Hey guys, lesson 5.2, division of algebraic fractions. We'll begin with a quick review of just plain old division of fractions, and then we'll talk about how we can divide and simplify algebraic fractions with variables. That's what makes them algebraic. So let's go. Really quickly in our toolkit today is just a reminder that when you are dividing, this comes in really handy with fractions. Dividing is in fact the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing by c over d, I can multiply by d over c. So as we take a look here, this warm-up is just asking you to take a look at this. Maybe drawing a picture would be helpful, just to remind you a little bit about dividing with fractions. So press pause, take a moment to take care of that. Hopefully in question number 1 here you have come up with the answer of 32 glasses of juice, and in number 2 you have come up with 21 full glasses of juice and 1/3 of a glass of juice. Let's take a look. Just starting with some straightforward fractions. Go ahead and simplify by completing the division. First one we'll take a look at, 1/2 divided by 1/3 is in fact the same as 1/2 times 3 over 1. Follow through on the multiplication. This is 3 over 2. At this point, you should use this as a model to complete the second two, number 2 and number 3. Go ahead and press pause and complete those. Number 2, rewritten as multiplication, 3 over 2 times 8 over 5. You can see that we are multiplying by the reciprocal. Before we multiply this one out, we can actually cancel some, factor out some like factors. 2 is the same as 2 times 1, and 8 is the same as 2 times 4. So when we factor out the 2 times, we'll be left with a 1 and a 4, respectively. So 3 times 4 gives us 12, and 1 times 5 gives us 5. This is 12/5. In number 3, 3/8 divided by 6/5. Go ahead and write that out as a multiplication. We'll be multiplying by 5/6. Before we multiply, 3 and 6 both have a factor of 3 times. 3 is 3 times 1, and 6 is 3 times 2. So we'll leave behind a 1 and a 2. Leaving us with 1 times 5, 5, 8 times 2, 16, 5/16. Now what about when it's algebraic? We're going to go ahead and take a look at some algebraic fractions here, starting with our very first example, x over 4 divided by 3 over 5. We would rewrite it as a multiplication, x over 4 times 5 over 3. Before we multiply here, 5 does not have any factors in common with the 3 or the 4, so this is just a straightforward multiplication, 5x over 12. Go ahead, use that as a model, and try the next one. Rewriting as multiplication, this becomes y over 9 times 3 over 2. As I take a look here, 3 does not have any common factors with 2, but 3 does have a factor in common with 9. So if we factor out the 3 times, we'd be left with a 1 and a 3, leaving us with y times 1 is y, and 3 times 2 is 6. So our final here is y over 6. Now, when we're dividing fractions, things can get a little tricky because we have a little something called a complex fraction. So what does a complex fraction look like? It is when we write fraction division in fraction form, because division is a fraction. So we have a fraction for our numerator, a fraction for our denominator, and then we have a whole big old fraction. So what does this really mean? It still means numerator divided by denominator. So let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. First step would be to rewrite the division horizontally rather than in fractional form. So take a moment in number 2 to rewrite the division that is being implied here by 7x over 4 over 2 on x over 8. So if we take a moment to rewrite that division, the big fraction bar is found right here, meaning we actually have 7x over 4 divided by 21x over 8, which we know would become a multiplication. 7x over 4 times 8 over 21x. Before we multiply here, we can look for some common factors. 7x and 21x have a common factor of x, and they also have a common factor of 7. So 7x times 1, and then 7x times 3 down here, so we'll be left behind with a 1 and a 3. 8 and 4 have a common factor of 4, 4 times 1, and 4 times 2. So if we factor out that 4 times, we're left with a 1 and a 2. So our numerator just became 1 times 2, and our denominator 1 times 3. This is 2/3. We'll continue seeing a little bit more of this in class next time, a couple of examples, and then you'll have some time to practice. Have a great day.